Okay, I think we are rolling. And today we did a 30-minute warm-up on the long reins, walk and trot, and we're going to do a 30-minute ride today. So yesterday I videotaped how he was doing at the trot on the long reins. It was just in the halter. Today he did it in tack. Can I have one more step? Thank you. Good enough. And again, what I'm showing you every time is the warm-up phase. I mean, I warmed him up on the ground on the long reins, but the first part of the ride, or the first part in the groundwork, is always where you're dealing with the old habits, the lack of change through the body, and things like this. So the riding this week, I spent this past week up to today 40 minutes working on the long reins and just kept the rides to 20 minutes. So I'm going to start bumping the rides up to 30 minutes. I think he's ready for that. Again, I'm just trying to keep the back level, the neck straight, on a very easy, imperfect figure eight. He's getting more and more stable through the hindquarters and the back, and that has to be the precursor to even trying to offer some rein resistance or gaining a rein contact. So I wanted to show you today too, what I mean by being unstable is if you sort of watch my seat, if I'm not adjusting and controlling my own balance, if I just let go, the way he's moving my seat is what his back and hindquarter are doing. So he doesn't like it very much, because when I don't control my own balance, like here, he tips me way out to the left. That's why he overloads the left front, underuses the right hind, right? So even on a right turn, he's throwing me way out to the left. And again, if I don't control my own balance, you can see how much movement is coming through my pelvis and my core. Oh, and the cat's back today. And how unequal he is as he goes around. So the work of stabilizing the core muscles and the deeper muscles that support his axial skeleton is for me to not allow him to move me around. So I'm shifting my weight. I'm feeling my own balance independent of his movement, and I'm resisting all that instability as best I can that I just showed you. So very often I have more than 50% of my body weight down the right side of my body, and I'm having to adjust my weight, adjust my muscle tone in order to remain level and in order not to be moved too much by the instability of his back and hindquarter. And how we use our weight and mass has a much bigger effect than any of the aids we can use or the maneuvers we can do. So like I said, he's still the pushing on the bit, or what we call rooting, is related directly to that instability through his back and hindquarter. So I'm just using gentle turns, keeping the back as stable and level as I can, and keeping the neck as straight as possible until I'm not working quite so hard to keep myself level and stable. That's how I know he's getting the hang of it. The harder I'm working, just to look like I'm doing nothing, right? It's all happening on the inside. But if I do my job correctly, it shouldn't look like I'm doing anything at all. But inside, I'm very busy, and he feels it, he responds to it, he pays attention to it, he feels every little weight shift I make. Oh, I forgot to look at my watch. Okay, I'm gonna guess we're 3 minutes into it. And I'm just gonna show you again the first maybe 15 minutes of his 30-minute ride. And my supervisor is back. my cat dog. He likes to hang out with me when I work the horses. So the slowing down, kind of starting to place his feet with more awareness and changing the flight path of all four legs, is the result of stabilizing his midline and reducing the rolling effect that's related to rotation as we go about our figure eight. So, not a lot to see yet in the riding part, but it's part of what is changing his overall coordination. And with carrying a rider, he has to use more muscle, more strength to find the same balance or maintain the same balance that he's doing in the groundwork without me on his back. It's the same whether it's groundwork or riding, but with more weight, he has to use more muscle. Oh, and one of my clients just showed up. So anyways, I will keep talking. I'm gonna guess it's been about 5 minutes. Now at that slow speed that he's just choosing right there, he's actually starting to use the hind legs more and the hind quarter and the back muscles in what's called the braking capacity. And it's brakes just like brakes on our car. And what they use the braking mechanism for is stability and also controlling their own body weight from overloading their own front legs. So while he has plenty of acceleration and push, which is why he rushes at the trot on the long reins, it's how he was jumping, his brakes are a little sticky, a little rusty. So that's why he keeps falling on the forehand, pushing on the bit, looking for me to hold him up with the reins, when that control over his own internal body weight and over his movement should be coming through his braking mechanism. And I call it the braking mechanism because it involves what's called the braking use of back muscles, hindquarter muscles, the forward rotation of the pelvis, which is related to engagement, but also the forward placement of the hind hooves is when they start the braking phase of the stride. So to get more engagement, I have to improve the braking, not the pushing. Right? That's also what gets the weight off the forehand, because the use of the back muscles and hindquarter in the braking capacity is how he resists his own body weight. So when the hind legs push, the hind legs are out behind the torso, the pelvis is rotated backwards, and the thrust from the hind legs is what gives you forward acceleration. But if they can't stabilize that acceleration or balance that acceleration with the braking, then they literally push their own body weight forward and onto their own front legs. And that's why they end up tightening the upper back, placing the front legs the wrong way, drifting through the shoulders, or holding in the neck. Hey there, I'm videotaping Ozzy's progress for the owner. He's doing very well, so right now I have it running, so I'm chit-chatting into the microphone. So I think we're nearing the 10-minute mark, but for Ozzy, there, where he goes really slow, is where he's actually working the back and hindquarter muscles more than when he's just racing around at a fast speed. And this is what's also restoring, very gently, restoring the full function of the hocks. And even though that pathology, the arthritis on the hocks, will never go away, the function of the hocks can be restored and he can remain sound by relearning how to use them. And very typical of jumping horses, racing, and even most dressage horses, he has an accelerator that isn't really balanced with the brakes. And so he was jumping hollow with his back down rather than up, and his hind legs too far behind him, more pushing and unequal to braking. So there, at that speed, I start to feel the hind legs under my seat, which means he's slowly getting more engaged. You can see it's not easy for him. He struggles. He struggles with the placement of the hind legs, and he struggles with the resistant or braking use of his back and hindquarter muscles. And that's exactly what braking is. It's like a resistance to our body weight falling forward. So while I'm maintaining my balance left to right, I'm also not being pulled forward with him. I'm not having to give him a lot of leg. He pretty much maintains forward. So I let him pick his speed, because these speed adjustments or brief halts are exactly him figuring out how to use the braking mechanism, and it's exactly how he learns to strengthen the whole braking mechanism. Let me do 5 more minutes. Okay. Yeah. So this slower speed is more appropriate for the ability of his back and hindquarter right now. If I don't equalize the pushing force with the braking force, then all the weight goes too far forward, and that's why he roots. It's why he's looking for me to hold him up with the bit. So at this point for Ozzy, the very slow, sort of careful, one step at a time is him becoming more engaged, starting to use his back more appropriately, and learning to have control over his own stability and motion and his own body weight internally through the use of the back and the hindquarters. And it's a work in progress. He really likes to push on that bit. So if you don't have soft hands and loose fingers, he will rip you right forward out of the saddle. Right? So I'm alternating left and right on rein pressure, but I'm not giving him any resistance on 2 reins at the same time. So I'm telling him I will not hold him up. That's for him to figure out. There. This slower, one step at a time, is where he's restoring healthy engagement and more function to those hocks, and actually more function, better use of the whole hindquarter. And even though it looks like nothing, you can see his ears are always on me. He's always concentrating. And it looks easy enough to sit still on him, but I'm constantly having to adjust my balance because he's so unstable through his back and hindquarter. There's the right hind. He balances on it and pushes gently with it. Very good. Right? And the fussiness is all of these chronically overused muscles related to the poor coordination are little by little regaining suppleness, and other muscles that have weakened because of the poor coordination are having to work very hard. So this is much harder for both of us than it might appear. And it's starting to build as he's gaining better and better coordination, even at the walk, the muscle development always supports the habitual coordination of the skeleton. So let me say that again. It's not speed that builds muscle. It's the exact coordination of the skeleton that uses very specific muscles in very specific ways. So even a horse like him with compromised hocks, this work at the walk is going to build a lot of muscle. And hopefully you can already see on the video, he's put on a fair bit of muscle around the hindquarter. There's a ways to go. But as that hindquarter starts to visibly look rounder and fuller, we'll see less and less of this pulling and rooting on the bit. There. So those are actually the steps I want. And there's a brief moment in there where he lengthens the neck and he's very light on the contact before he pushes. My neighbors are doing all kinds of things. I hope the background noise isn't coming through. So I'll try to point it out because there's just a moment where he controls his weight. He lengthens and supples the muscles through the neck and the entire top line. Whoop, and that would be a shoulder clunk, which again is just a change of muscle tone, but the whole front leg sort of adjusts. So what's happening is as he's gaining stability through the back and the hindquarter, it's taking the tension out of the muscles through the upper back, shoulders, and neck. So again, I'll see if I can find that moment I'm talking about, hopefully while I'm to the side of the camera or coming around where you can see it. So just there, where he lengthens the neck, only for a stride, and then he almost instantly falls forward. There, the neck lengthens, and he fell forward with less force. So that's the beginning of him learning to control his own body weight through his back and hindquarter instead of looking for me to hold him up with the bit. And I think that's about 15 minutes. So I'll pause there, and then I'll ride him another 15 minutes today. And that should be our new program this week. Walk, trot, big circles, little circles as the warm-up for about 30 minutes, and then a 30-minute ride.